The Acura car brand, otherwise known as the luxury version of the Honda brand, has come out with honestly an extraordinary car over the past multiple decades, and with us today is going to be this 2017 Acura NSX, and in my opinion it's one of the best supercars to come out of Japan. We're going to be talking about what makes this car special and why I personally love it. So with that, my name's Trent and you're watching God Next. So like I said, this is a 2017 Acura NSX, and to me this thing is absolutely gorgeous. I think this is one of the cars that people sleep on a lot. They compare it to the NSX of the 90s, which granted those things are, you know, icons in and of itself, but this car still gives me that, you know, it just looks good. Honestly, I really like the design of this car. It doesn't share the same characteristics of the previous NSX. It doesn't have that long tail. I don't believe it does, at least. But otherwise, this car, it's got its own class of its own, but let's talk about some of the performance specs. Now, this is a mid-engine car, so the engine's not up here, it's back there. But this thing does have a V6 engine. It's producing 500 horsepower, so it is a pretty quick car. This one's also a hybrid, so you do get that extra output from the electric motors in this car. But I don't want to just talk about specs. You guys can look all that stuff up online. You guys aren't here for that. You guys are here to see, honestly, what this car is and what makes it cool. So this car does have these beautiful alloy 19-inch wheels, which they honestly pair really well with the silver on this car. I really like that design aspect. The front of the car, it's aggressive, it's mean, it sits really low. It looks like a supercar that you'd see. I mean, you see it in racing series, you see it in IMSA, you see it in the WEC. Granted, they're phasing them out right now, but it still looks like a race car in my opinion. You got that sleek design look, you know, it looks like a fastback almost. It looks like the wind's pushing up against it. It looks just sporty. It is honestly a beautiful looking car. You've got these massive vents right here that are pushing air into the engine, but they look like what you'd see on a sports car. Moving on back here, you get more of those sharp edges, sharp lines. But one thing I really love back here is that if you look into this rear window, granted it's the rear window that you can see out of with the rearview mirror, but you can see the engine sitting right there, and you got that big NSX badge right there. Also, another little thing I do like is right here, it does say number 01574, which is, it's saying it's precision crafted by Performance Manufacturing Center. That's a cool little detail about this car that just shows you which model number this is and stuff like that. Back here though, you've got that, you know, the NSX is iconic for that light bar they had in the 90s. And they do kind of continue with it right here. They got that light stretches all the way across, but they got these bold lights right back here, and they look really good. They match really well at the front of the car. One thing I will say about this car is it's a lot bulkier back here than the front, and you can just tell it when you're looking at it from the back. It looks like a much bigger car than it actually is. From the front, it looks absolutely tiny, but I think it pairs really well with it. You got that big center exhaust right down there, and one thing I'm a little bit disappointed about this car is it actually doesn't sound the greatest. If you put this up against a Nissan GTR, a Lamborghini, hell, even a Porsche, this thing doesn't really compete. It's pretty quiet, but it is just a V6, it's a hybrid V6, so I'm not expecting these loud sounds, and if I want to, I could put an aftermarket exhaust to make it sound a lot better. But honestly, if I'm buying a car for over $100,000, I'm pretty much just buying it for the looks. I'm expecting it to be a high performance car anyways for that price tag. So I'm buying for looks personally, in my opinion, on a car like this. But let's jump into the car and we'll talk about the interior as well as the overall driving experience. So first thing I want to talk about is the interior design, or the exterior design carries on into the interior of this car, where honestly it's a beautiful looking car from the interior. You got this red leather that wraps all throughout the car, and that is an option specifically on this build. But I think Acura's killed it, honestly. With the just overall design of this car, I love the suede that you got throughout the seats as well as the center console right here. The only downside I hated about this car is just the gear selector. It's something Acura does, and I think Honda does as well. I think it looks a little ugly, it's a little tacky, but you've got the drive manual button right here, you've got neutral, you have a little switch for reverse and a parking button. To be honest, I'd prefer just the actual, you know, gear selector like that, but I don't want to nitpick this one too hard. You do have a dial right here in the center to control which drive mode you want to be in. You got Sport, Sport Plus, Comfort, you know, the standards you get on all cars like this, honestly. Now, this is a 2017 car, So a few of the things are outdated. If I turn the car on right now, honestly, you'll notice that the infotainment system is a little outdated. This car is, granted, 8 years almost 8 years old, so I'm not expecting these high definition screens that you get on cars nowadays, but it's got that blue tint to it, and it looks old. It looks like a car from 2013. The gauge cluster looks pretty good. Again, it's still a little bit outdated, but the actual gauge cluster itself, where I'm telling me my RPMs and my gas levels, I mean, honestly, it looks great. It's pretty responsive. It is tilted back a little bit, so it's a little bit harder to see, but that's because this car, the roof line of this car is just so low. Moving on to the steering wheel, I personally love the design of the steering wheel. It's not a complete, just round steering wheel. It's got a little bit of a straight line shape to the top of it, but you got that big Acura badge. You get that on every car. But the buttons on this car, honestly, they're very intuitive. I really like how you press them and you can actually feel them. You got dials on it as well, so you can adjust the volume with these little dials. You got other switches, but it's just cool look and feel. You got the paddle shifters back here in silver, so they're very easy to see, and they turn with the steering wheel. So honestly, the steering wheel is probably one of my favorite parts about this car. One thing that's a little weird in this car, and I don't know if this is an aftermarket thing, but these cup holders are honestly pretty bulky, and if you're a bigger person sitting in the passenger seat, you're not gonna have a very comfortable ride. So that's a little bit weird. Overall, the design of this car, you've got a lot of sharp lines that match the exterior of this car. You've got suede, you've got leather. These door handles are honestly really bulky, but they're nice to grab onto. You've got your mirror switches on the door panels over here. Passenger door panel, it's pretty bland, but it's the passenger. They don't need to control that much stuff over there. But overall, the interior of this car, I think I'd give Acura, I'd give them an A at least. But it's a fun car. It's comfortable inside. It's probably the most, just sleek looking interior of a supercar that I've at least had in recently. All right, so this is probably my favorite part of doing these videos, is actually getting to drive the cars. And this one's special to me because honestly, it's a supercar. But I mean, it's a fun car, and I've grown up seeing the NSX from the 90s, and then I'm from Long Beach. I go to the Long Beach Grand Prix a lot, and the title sponsor of that is Acura, so I see these cars every year down there, and they always look super fun to drive, super fun to just be in general. So getting the chance to actually take this car out onto the streets and drive it, it's honestly it feels like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But today we're here to talk about just what it feels like to drive a car like this. And the first thing I'm noticing right now, I'm driving in the sport mode, which is pretty much the standard mode, because you got quiet, sport, and sport plus on this car. But one thing I really don't like about this car in sport mode is that when you're at those low RPMs, or even just sitting here at a red light, it goes into the EV mode, so you're just driving fully electric power, which honestly, I don't like that. I know other car brands, when you put it in sport, you don't drop into just EV mode. So seeing that on this car is a little bit disappointing, but I understand why they do it. It's to save a little bit of power. You get, honestly, more power output when you are on the gas pedal. But other than that, it's my only complaint with the powertrain on this car. This car is super responsive. As soon as I step on the gas, you get that little jerk back, pushing you back into your seat, which this car is, again, a V6, pushing out 500 horsepower. So it is a fast car. It's super powerful. And honestly, this car is super light, so you don't need those cars that are pushing 800, 700 horsepower. So honestly, I think it's a good balance for this car. Now, the handling on this car is super responsive. You got a thick steering wheel to grab onto, so it feels great in your hand, and you can feel, as soon as you turn the steering wheel, you can feel yourself a jolt to the right, to the left, whichever way you need to go. It's a super fun handling car, and I get why they use these for, racing series. I do personally, I love the way just you feel integrated into this car, into the cockpit right here, and it makes you feel like you are a part of the car. So definitely love that about this car. And personally, I love driving cars like this. It's fun, it's a cool opportunity. And if I were to compare it to other cars that I've driven, I would say, honestly, I don't know what I would compare it to really. It's a different feel than a 911. It's a different feel than, honestly, McLarens are super robust and just very aggressive. So I wouldn't put stuff there. It feels like a luxury sports car, supercar, because it's super smooth, super soft suspension. You don't feel like you're fighting the car constantly. You just kind of, it drives like a normal car, but you've got that extra power, I guess, if you guys know what I mean. Honestly, I love this car. Every video game I play in, this is one of the first cars you see when you open up like the list of cars, because Acura is always going to be at the beginning. But I love using this car in video games. I love just seeing them out on the streets. I think it's just a unique car, and you don't see them very often. And then again, that goes back to, I feel like this car is very slept on when you compare it to the Acura NSX of the 90s. People love those things. People still love them, and trust me, I love them too. And I get that this doesn't really live up to the hype that car had, but this one is special in its own type of way. So I love this car, and if I had the money, I'd buy it. And obviously we can't be taking this car down the streets showing you guys how fast it goes, because we don't personally own this car, and I don't really want to risk crashing or getting in trouble with the owners of this car. So we're just gonna take it on a simple test drive, you know, get a feel for it. And from what I've experienced so far, I would recommend this car to somebody who's looking for a affordable, I guess, supercar that's comfortable, easy to drive. You don't have to, you know, think about it too much. So definitely a good car for me. In conclusion though, I think they've killed it with this car. It's fun, it's comfortable, it looks great. The exterior, like I said before, it's a sleek looking car. It's got a low profile from the front, a little bit bulkier in the back, but I don't mind that, honestly. I mean, you look at other Japanese car brands like the Nissan GTR, where it's just a bulky car in general, but it's got that similar essence on the back of this car, where it's a more boxy, you know, you got those sharper edges on the back end of the car, and you've got that more redefined sports car look on the front of this car. I would definitely say they killed it with this car. I think it's one of the best looking supercars you can get, and I mean, this one is 8 years old, and it still, to me, stands up to a lot of the cars you see out on the streets today. But let us know what you guys think down in the comments below. I want to hear your guys' personal thoughts on this generation, the NSX. Do you guys like it? Do you guys hate it? Let us know why you guys hate it if you do. Be sure to check back in with us, and we'll see you guys in the next video.